Most people think walking is too gentle to matter, too soft to ever change a stubborn, resistant body. It doesn't leave you breathless, doesn't make you sore, doesn't feel like something powerful is happening inside you. In a world obsessed with intensity, walking gets dismissed as background noise, something lazy people do instead. And yet, one strange pattern keeps repeating itself in the lives of people who walk daily. They sleep deeper, feel calmer, and their blood sugar somehow becomes steadier without trying very hard. Over time, fat loss starts looking easier, even without brutal workouts or extreme punishing diets involved. The change isn't sudden or dramatic. It's quiet, slow, and strangely persistent underneath the surface. This creates a contradiction most fitness advice never dares to properly explain to you. If walking barely burns calories, why does it create such an outsized impact on your health? Why do casual walkers often see results that dedicated, exhausted gym-goers somehow never seem to reach? The answer isn't calories, isn't step counts, and isn't willpower or discipline at all. The real answer is hormonal, hidden deep inside a system most people never think about. Your body doesn't transform because you exercise harder. It transforms because it receives specific signals. Walking sends your body a very particular signal that intense exercise almost never sends. It tells your nervous system something about your environment, something about rhythm, safety, and predictability. And your hormones are always listening carefully to whatever message your movement is sending them. Before walking changes your weight or your metabolism, it changes what your hormones believe entirely. It changes how much stress your body thinks it's currently under, moment by moment. It changes how energy gets handled and which systems are finally allowed to relax. This isn't about fitness tips or step goals. It's about what happens inside you. Specifically, this is about what happens to your hormones during just 30 quiet minutes daily. Once you understand that, walking stops looking too easy and starts looking incredibly precise. Hormones aren't switches that flip on and off after a single workout or meal. They're messengers responding to patterns over time, not to isolated one-time moments or actions. Your endocrine system is constantly asking one repeated question: is this environment safe or dangerous? That single question shapes how every hormone in your body behaves throughout the day. When life feels chaotic, sleep is irregular, and pressure never stops, hormones tilt toward protection. Cortisol stays elevated, insulin becomes defensive, and adrenaline lingers just beneath the surface constantly. Walking interacts with this defensive system completely differently than almost any other form of exercise. It doesn't shock the body or demand sudden, rapid mobilization of stored, protected energy reserves. Instead, it quietly shifts your nervous system away from constant alert and toward genuine calm. As you walk at a relaxed pace, your body drifts from stress mode toward balance. This matters because hormones follow the nervous system's lead, not the other way around. When the nervous system calms down, cortisol production gradually begins decreasing without any forced effort. Lower cortisol changes how insulin behaves, letting glucose get handled with far less resistance. Glucagon can finally mobilize stored energy properly, no longer blocked by constant stress signals. Even adrenaline and noradrenaline begin settling, no longer needed to keep you on alert. What matters here isn't intensity, it's interpretation, how your body reads the movement itself. Your body interprets walking as non-threatening, resembling migration or daily life, not sudden emergency. That interpretation tells your hormonal system that energy demands are manageable and completely predictable.
Over time, this repeated signal reshapes your hormonal tone, lowering baseline stress very gradually. Hormones stop reacting like every day is a crisis and start behaving with margin. This is exactly why walking changes hormones even when it doesn't feel like much. The change happens quietly, beneath the surface, in how your body reads its world. Many people misunderstand walking because they expect immediate, obvious results like intense workouts provide. A hard session leaves you sweaty and exhausted, giving you visible proof something happened. Walking doesn't offer that dramatic feedback, so it's easy to assume it's doing nothing. But walking doesn't work through sudden spikes. It works by quietly reshaping your baselines. Most hormonal problems aren't about levels being too high momentarily. They're about drifting baselines. Cortisol doesn't cause damage because it spikes occasionally. It causes damage when it never drops. Insulin doesn't become harmful because it rises after meals. It becomes harmful with constant exposure. Walking targets this exact baseline problem, giving your body a steady, predictable, repeated signal. Over days and weeks, cortisol output softens, not dramatically, but in ways that truly matter. Your nervous system learns it doesn't need to stay braced and defensive all the time. As cortisol settles, insulin sensitivity slowly improves, and muscles absorb glucose without resistance building up. Blood sugar becomes less volatile, and these changes accumulate quietly beneath your conscious awareness. This is the missing lever most people never pull, chasing effort instead of proper signals. High-intensity workouts spike hormones temporarily, but walking reshapes their resting state permanently over time. That distinction matters enormously for fat loss and long-term metabolic health outcomes overall. Fat isn't released through hormonal spikes, it's released when baseline conditions finally allow it. Walking done consistently is one of the simplest ways to shift those conditions safely. Once that baseline begins moving, the effects start stacking across multiple body systems simultaneously. What felt invisible at first becomes noticeable in ways disproportionate to the actual effort. One of the first places people notice change is in their daily energy regulation. With cortisol no longer spiking unpredictably, energy levels stop swinging between highs and crashes. Instead, there's a steadier sense of fuel throughout the day, reducing background metabolic stress. Fat loss responds differently too, because lower cortisol means less prioritized bodily protection mode. Visceral fat, highly sensitive to stress signals, no longer receives the same defensive command. Over time, this makes fat more accessible, not because you forced it, but allowed it. Appetite regulation improves alongside this, as leptin and ghrelin become easier to interpret clearly. Hunger signals feel clearer and less urgent, and emotional cravings lose much of their intensity. Eating becomes more responsive instead of reactive, guided by real signals instead of stress. Sleep quality often improves without any conscious effort required from you at all. Walking reinforces circadian rhythm through consistent movement and natural light exposure throughout your day. As cortisol declines, falling asleep becomes easier and nighttime awakenings become far less frequent. Better sleep feeds back into hormonal balance, amplifying every other benefit even further still. Mood and mental clarity improve too, as background stress signaling softens throughout your system. Anxiety softens, focus sharpens, and your mind feels quieter without problems actually disappearing entirely. None of these benefits exist in isolation, they compound, each one making the next easier. Together, they create an environment where fat loss feels like a natural outcome, not battle.
To understand why this happens reliably, it helps to look at what research shows. Walking doesn't work through one single pathway. It reduces total stress while improving fuel handling. Studies consistently show regular walking lowers baseline cortisol, especially compared to sedentary or overtrained bodies. This reduction isn't dramatic short-term, but over weeks it becomes deeply meaningful and lasting. Walking also improves insulin sensitivity through both direct and indirect biological mechanisms working together. At the muscle level, repeated low-intensity movement increases glucose uptake without high insulin demand. This clears blood sugar more efficiently after meals, reducing prolonged insulin exposure over time. Compared to intense exercise, walking produces a completely different hormonal profile inside your body. Intense training spikes adrenaline, cortisol, and lactate, useful in small doses but risky when stressed.
Walking instead lowers sympathetic activity and encourages the parasympathetic state where repair actually happens. Research also links regular walking to reduced visceral fat, not through calories but hormones. Visceral fat responds strongly to cortisol, and when cortisol declines, that fat becomes less protected. This is why walking often reduces waist size even when total weight loss stays modest. Walking influences growth hormone indirectly too, by improving sleep quality and circadian rhythm consistency. It supports stronger nighttime growth hormone pulses, essential for tissue repair and fat metabolism. Timing matters as well. Morning walks help set circadian rhythm and lower daytime cortisol levels. Post-meal walks improve glucose handling and reduce insulin spikes without requiring intense exertion. What science consistently shows is that walking works because it's repeatable and non-threatening movement. It lowers stress without creating new stress, exactly the condition hormones need to regulate. But there's an important caveat that often gets completely overlooked by eager, motivated people. Walking only works hormonally when your body interprets it as low-threat, supportive movement. The moment it becomes another source of pressure, many benefits quietly begin disappearing entirely. A common mistake is turning walking into punishment, obsessively tracking steps and forcing exhausted sessions. Instead of calming the system, walking becomes another demand placed on an already stressed body. Cortisol no longer drifts downward, it stays elevated to meet perceived constant energy shortages. Another mistake is treating walking as a replacement for actual recovery and proper rest. When sleep is poor and stress is high, adding more walking doesn't fix the problem. The nervous system doesn't distinguish between healthy movement and intentional stress. It only counts total load. Some people undermine walking's benefits by pairing it with extreme, punishing dietary restriction daily. Walking lowers stress hormones best when energy availability feels stable and genuinely safe overall. Severe restriction sends the opposite message, making blood sugar harder to regulate consistently. Cortisol rises to compensate, pushing your body back into a protective, defensive state again. The issue was never walking itself. The issue is always the surrounding context around it. Walking cannot override poor sleep, chronic stress, or severe undereating on its own power. Its true power comes from how it fits into the larger pattern of your life. When it supports recovery, it lowers stress, but when it adds pressure, it turns neutral. The warning is simple. Walking should make your system feel calmer, never more depleted. If it consistently leaves you exhausted or anxious, the important signal has already been lost. When walking supports the body instead of challenging it, something deeper begins shifting inside.
Not just hormonally, but in how you relate to your entire health journey overall. Once you see walking this way, you stop judging it by difficulty or calories burned. It becomes something else entirely, a way of communicating with your biology in its language. Walking works not because it pushes the body, but because it quietly reassures it instead. It tells your nervous system that movement is possible without danger or constant threat, that energy demand is manageable, and the environment is stable enough to finally relax. For a body that's spent years in low-level stress, that message becomes powerful. This reframing changes how you measure progress, shifting from doubt toward genuine, quiet noticing. You start asking whether you're calmer in the evening, sleeping more deeply than before. Does hunger feel less urgent? Is your energy more even throughout each passing day? These aren't small side effects. They're clear signs your hormones are finally regulating properly. It also changes how you approach effort, valuing consistency over constant, exhausting stimulation instead. You allow your body to adapt gradually, rather than demanding immediate forced results overnight. In doing so, you create the exact conditions your hormones actually need to recalibrate.
Walking becomes cooperation rather than control, supporting processes instead of forcing them to happen. When the body senses that consistent support, it responds in ways that finally last. This is why walking has helped so many people who felt permanently, hopelessly stuck before. Not because it was secret or extreme, but because it restored something fundamental: missing regulation. When regulation returns, the body no longer needs to cling to protective, defensive patterns. Seen this way, walking isn't a fallback option, it's a foundational signal your body needs. One that tells your body it can finally stand down from constant, exhausting vigilance. At this point, the real question isn't whether walking works, but what signal you're sending. Is it telling your body it's safe to slow down, or that it needs alertness? Is it adding calm to your system, or quietly adding more pressure without you noticing? If you want better fat loss, metabolic health, or hormone balance, stop chasing more effort. Understanding which signals matter most is the real answer you've been searching for. Walking is one of the simplest ways to start changing those signals without overwhelm. Not because it's easy, but because it's biologically precise in a way few things are. Walking interacts deeply with stress, cortisol, blood sugar, sleep, and visceral fat every single day. Understanding those connections is often what unlocks progress that once felt completely impossible before. Real health doesn't come from pushing harder, it comes from working with your biology. Sometimes the most powerful transformation begins with the simplest habit, done consistently, in context.